Dear Mark Campbell, one of the editors of Medya News and activist, very long time of friends of the Kurds. Thanks for joining us today.
It's very nice to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me, Erem.
Thank you. So let's start with the latest developments of the Turkey's occupation attacks against the media defense zones. What is your comments about that? How do you going to evaluate these latest attacks very shortly?
Well, I mean, the latest attack seems to be slightly more than, I mean, we've seen these attacks before, haven't we? We see them every year when the snow melts in Kurdistan and the Turkish army attack in those areas. This time it does seem to be slightly more serious because obviously there seems to be more of a coordination with the KDP and the Barzanis. You know, the Turkish state have been trying to solve the Kurdish issue by military means for for nearly 100 years. Like next year, 2023, is the 100th anniversary of the establishment of the Turkish state. And the Turkish state, from the very beginning, they made the mistake of treating the Kurdish issue as a security issue, as an issue that they could solve by military means, alone. But obviously, almost 100 years later, the Kurds are stronger. You know, the Kurds have got liberated zones in Rojava in north and east Syria. We saw at the most recent Newroz celebrations millions of Kurds openly expressing their Kurdish identity and their political will behind Abdullah Öcalan. So it's, you know, it's the same means that the Turkish state used to try and solve the Kurdish issue. They, you know,
so we can say it's the same old Turkish style to approach to a conflict.
It's the same approach, the same tired approach of thinking that they can just simply repeating the same military means by which to try and solve the Kurdish issue. It's failed for almost the last 100 years. You know, the Kurds now are much stronger. They have, it seems the more they try to oppress the Kurds, the stronger the Kurdish identity gets.
What we've seen on the statements of Turkish state on the latest attacks, it's been underlined that these attacks actually have been carried out with the allies and friends of Turkey. Who are these friends? Who are these allies in particular?
Well, I mean, we know that again. You know, in the whole period of the struggle, the armed struggle or the freedom struggle of the Kurdish people, it's the same allies. It's America. You know, America, the UK, you know, all the NATO countries. They have already tried this. This is not something new. You know, they spent billions upon billions of dollars trying to militarily suppress the PKK, but it's failed, you know, every single year. It's failed up till now. And we need a different approach. You know, we need a political approach. We need an approach that treats the Kurdish issue in a political way, and we need to try and reach a peaceful political resolution to the Kurdish issue, not the same tired old military approach to the Kurdish issue.
Definitely. Can we also say that the KDP UK is involved in these allies of Turkey as well? As we've seen, the Mesrur Barzani has visited Boris Johnson as well. How would you going to comment?
Well, of course, I mean, the KDP have always, you know, been with Turkey, but it seems that, I mean, I remember, you know, I'm old enough to remember Masoud Barzani in the 90s saying that Kurdistan will be the graveyard of the Turkish state if they invade, you know, and you know, but this, you know, so they've tried to, they try to hide their support of the Turkish state, but it's obvious to everybody now. Everybody knows that the KDP are fully behind the Turkish state. There's no shame, you know, they're just fully behind the Turkish state. They're trying to protect their financial interests, you know, as they become more unpopular in South Kurdistan. They look to the Turkish army and the Turkish state to protect their own personal financial interests of the Barzani dynasty, basically.
Another significant issue is the PKK and the listing of the PKK as well. Do you think, let's start with that part, do you think Turkey is hiding behind of the excuse of that the PKK is still on the list while carrying out these operations?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same old criminalization of the Kurdish issue, isn't it? From the very beginning, anybody from the uprisings in the 20s and the uprisings in the 30s, for 100 years, any Kurdish person who stands up and demands their rights, their cultural rights, their political rights, their linguistic rights, they're treated as a terrorist. And this terminology of terrorism is just becoming so old and so worn and so tired, and it actually doesn't even solve, it doesn't solve the issue for them either. As I say, the Kurdish identity is stronger now, so just continuing to criminalize the Kurdish issue and treat it as an issue of security and to be solved by military means no longer works. So there's got to come a time, that everybody has got to face it and say, look, it can't be solved by military means, it has to be solved. So rather than, more and more people dying and more hardship and misery for everybody, friends of Turkey, people like, governments like the UK who have a very strong, close relationship with Turkey, should be using their offices to try to persuade Turkey that, look, this policy has failed. You need, like us, with our war against the IRA and in Ireland, it went on for so many years in very similar ways. But there came a moment when they realized that they can't solve it militarily and they have to begin negotiations. So the British state are in a very good position to be able to, to give advice to the Turkish state about how they conducted those negotiations and how they came to the Good Friday Agreement and had a political solution, in Ireland. So, the sooner that happens, the better. But unfortunately, the UK just coming out of the European Union, Brexit, they're looking for trade deals. So they're looking for arms sales. So one of the first trade deals they did actually was with Turkey. So Turkey have obviously said to them, okay, we'll have a trade deal, but you have to crack down, you have to criminalize the Kurdish freedom struggle and freedom movement and the PKK.
You have to keep the PKK on the list.
You have to keep the PKK on the terrorist list. So
you already mentioned and underlined the Turkey and Britain's relations, close relations, and this is historic relation. Basically, it's not new.
Yeah.
Lately, we can see that Turkey, with the Turkish pressure, we can see British policies get allergy from the PKK flags. On the last few protests, they are attacking directly to the flag and the holders of flag. You have been one of them that has been arrested because of having a PKK flag on your hand. What is your comment about that? Where does the allergy come from?
I mean, for the last 30, 40 years, the British state have been assisting Turkey repressing the Kurdish issue in the UK. But it's been a very subtle approach. It hasn't been as bad as Germany, for example. So they will target people, they will target people for selling newspapers, collecting money, but they won't ever, and this is the thing, the British state, they never take it to court. So we have noticed over the last couple of months, I mean, actually we noticed it before when there was a trade deal between Turkey and the then Prime Minister. When Erdogan came to visit in 10 Downing Street, they literally put on a show. So they had police horses, they had dogs, you know, they attacked the protesters outside Downing Street, just to show Turkey that they are, you know, complying with Turkey's wishes. Basically, the British state, they act as a franchise for the Turkish army, for the Turkish police, which I think if most people in this country were aware of, they would be completely outraged. And yes, just over the last couple of weeks, on protests, anti-war, peaceful Kurdish protests, we've had hundreds of police, you know, on these demonstrations. You know, we've been on these demonstrations with very high-ranking officers who are obviously getting instructions from politicians to crack down. So they come with their pieces of paper. There's a picture of the PKK flag. So they look around and they go to arrest people who have got the PKK flag. And on that particular demonstration that day, it was just ridiculous. There was like 200 police. They came in, they attacked people. And I, just on a point of principle, I just picked up the flag and I said, I'm prepared to be arrested for this. And I just held it up in a protest to say that criminalization doesn't work. Criminalizing the legitimate struggle of the Kurdish people is not the answer. It's only going to prolong the conflict. Really, you know, I think the same thing happened with the IRA, the same thing happened with the African National Congress, for example. The African National Congress, you know, were on the terrorist list. Mandela was a terrorist, the British government. You know, they're not going to win by criminalization. They're not going to win by militarily attacking the PKK. A lot of this is presumably to do with the elections next year in 2023, in June next year, 2023. Erdogan is going down in the opinion polls. So what is the normal thing when Turkish parties are going down in the opinion polls? They attack the Kurds. They use racist Turkish nationalism to try to increase nationalism and to try to increase the votes for their party. But there again in Turkey, you know, it's not looking good for Erdogan next year.
To wrap all these up, we have one of your best speech footage. We would like to show that. Let's watch that one as well now, and then we will continue.
Okay.
The Kurdish people have been victims of racist Turkish aggression for the last 30 years. Tens of thousands of Kurdish people have been massacred by the Turkish state. The PKK are the defenders of the Kurdish people. The PKK defended the Yazidis against ISIS. The Yazidis are freedom fighters. The PKK are building a democratic, radical feminist democracy in the north and east of Syria. The only reason that this policeman is asking me and my comrade to take this flag down is because the British state helped the Turkish fascist regime.
Lastly, dear Mark Campbell, what needs to be done to stop Turkey's these invasion attacks, and on the both wise, on the lobby wise and diplomatic wise, as well as about the protests as well, because Kurdish community in diaspora, it's been 10 days now. Everyone is outside on the streets protesting day and night.
Everybody needs to go to their local Kurdish community centre, you know, and be organised. You know, they need to take part in the demonstrations. They need to, you know, to try and approach their local media. You know, there's an extraordinary silence about Turkey's military attacks in South Kurdistan. All the attention is on Ukraine at the moment, Russia's attacks on Ukraine. But when a NATO country, Turkey, attacks a sovereign country like Iraq or Syria, as they are doing in the north of Syria and in northern Iraq, South Iraqi Kurdistan, there's no coverage of it. So this is extraordinary. So we have to be out on the streets, yes. We have to lobby, yes. We have to use the media to try to get, to try and get the story out there. We have to appeal to journalists to cover the story. We have to get, verifiable evidence, from the region as to the nature of the war crimes that are going on. We need to take them to laboratories and have them tested and report it, as a fact. There's lots of allegations about chemical weapons being used. We need to get these tests from these weapons and verify them, and then we need to have it reported. So, people are tired. I can understand that people are tired, but really now is the time that we all need to be with renewed energy. We need to be out campaigning. We need to be on the streets. We need to be bringing attention to Turkey's war crimes, going to organizations like Amnesty, like, CPT, the OCW, on chemical weapons. Really, this year, we need to be as active as we possibly can be.
So we need to double up the efforts.
We need to double up the efforts. We need to double up the efforts because we're close.
Humanity crimes, basically.
Absolutely, but we're close, Erem. We really are close. They cannot solve this issue by military means. So, the solution is near, but everybody needs to make that last effort in activity to really, bring it to the attention. Of course, UK, America, but we have to say, the majority of countries in the world do not see the PKK as a terrorist organization. The majority of the world see the PKK as freedom fighters, as people who defeated ISIS, who turned the tide in Kobani, who protected the Yazidis on Sinjar Mountain. And once people, once people know the true ideology of the PKK, the true ideology of Abdullah Öcalan, the democratic, progressive nature of the politics of democratic confederalism and the PKK, there's no argument. I always say the truth is our strongest weapon, so we need to take the truth and we need to use it to fight.
Dear Mark Campbell, one of the editors of Medya News, thanks for joining us. Thank you for your valuable comments today.
And Adam, thank you for all your work that you do too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.